Hello and welcome. In this series of videos, we are working on the following repository Flask block. We might rename it in the future since we've already successfully migrated from Flask to Fast API while preserving most of the old functionalities and improving them, extending in certain cases, and so on. So last time we've managed to revive end-to-end testing, and we are still working on the following ticket. I won't be rereading everything right now, but basically we want to have the core API working while having it a bit modernized and using Fast API instead of Flask. And for that purpose, of course, most of the heavy lifting is done by the AI agent, and I am just trying to stop it whenever it goes in wrong direction, and also giving it ideas how to improve whenever it's getting stuck and so on. Yeah, so I am like a coordinator in this series of videos, and the main worker is the agent itself. So let's try to pick up where we stopped last time. Mainly we have revived the end-to-end testing. Let me just try to run it. So we have those scripts which we will have to also improve, and everything that has to do with the terminal or typing any commands, we try to preserve it using those scripts. So let me just try to run the tests again to make sure that they are still there and everything is working as it should without any additional dependencies. So everything is set up within the script, looks like it. It installed the dependencies, started the MySQL with Docker Compose, waited for the MySQL. So everything, including the setup of the database and the HTTP server itself, seems like it happens under the hood when we try to run the tests. Okay, and the tests themselves are green. We don't yet verify what exactly is there, but at least we have some tests. We are able to start the server and we are able to set up the database, which is a great success. So now let's look into the workflow or the GitHub workflow that we have and try to revive it. Yeah, maybe that should be enough. And it should try to take a look into what's happening here in the workflow and verify whether current version of scripts, which should be called here in a sequential manner one by one. So install dependencies, like first set up Python, of course, then install dependencies, the database, generate credentials, prepare DB schema, and then finally run the tests. If all of this is still relevant or doesn't need any updates at all. So if it doesn't need any updates, then we can open a PR and see if it works there. But it already found some issues with the current workflow. Let me check what scripts we actually have available and what the current project structure needs. Okay, so it doesn't yet tell us what it found, but it found something. Now I see the issues. The workflow is outdated and it refers to the scripts that don't exist, and it's still configured for Flask instead of Fast API. Let me update the workflow to work with our current Fast API setup and the script we have. Okay, that's really cool. It did a lot of changes very quickly. And now it tries to verify the scripts. I noticed that in the GitHub actions, we need to be careful about sudo usage and timeouts. Let me create a simplified version of the workflow that uses a manual step for installing MySQL client instead of relying on the script to do it with sudo. Okay, but why do we use sudo? Let me check where it is. Yeah, maybe we can just remove the sudo. Let me Okay, let's wait for it, but I think that we should instead just remove the sudo here instead of doing some manual steps, because then we will have two versions of doing the same thing, and this is never good. Testing if the wait for MySQL sh script works with the current setup. Okay, it should work. As you can see here, we run it, and using a password on command line interface can be insecure. Yeah, that we know. One day we will try to use some better ways, but for now we stay with it since it's a simpler way. And it also try to run the tests. Looks like the tests are running. Let's wait. Perfect. The tests are working great. However, I noticed one issue for CI. Our tests are currently trying to start Docker Compose inside the tests, but in GitHub Action, MySQL is already provided as service. Let me create a CI-friendly version of our test that can detect when it's running in CI and skip the Docker setup. Let me check. I need to modify test to be CI aware. Let him break it and say, let's not make it CI aware, but let's simply verify if MySQL is already there. If so, we can skip the setup in the test script. And that way, we preserve the auth functionality. Also, let's not add any manual dependency installation. And let's try to remove sudo from the script itself. And that would be better than trying to install it in two different ways. Great idea. Let's modify the setup to detect if MySQL is already available and skip Docker setup if so. And also remove the sudo dependency from the script. Let me start with updating the test script to detect MySQL. Okay, let's wait. Let's see what it changed. So here it was simply calling install dependency. But now we added this check if MySQL already available. Okay, that looks good. And only if not available, then install if needed. Also, it should remove some sudo installation. We don't need to install it globally. It's enough if we install it just for the current user. Now let's also update the GitHub workflow to remove the manual MySQL client installation step, since our script now handles it gracefully. Exactly, that's what we want. Okay, it verified that everything still works. That's a good idea. We run the dependency installation. We have everything there. The script works perfectly. It detects that MySQL client tools are already available and installs all Python dependencies successfully. Let's now test the full test suite to make sure everything works together. Yeah, it works. Let's now test if CI setup would work. Let me simulate stopping MySQL to fall back to Docker setup. And let's see. It started another MySQL instance when it has detected that no MySQL is available. Okay, so seems to work great. Let's now commit and push our improved workflow. That's a good idea. And let's see if it works. Okay, it's pushed and already detected here. So had the recent pushes 2 seconds ago. Let's create a pull request. Let's create a pull request and see if the workflow will run without any errors. Initializes the containers. I think this step is the longest. In the meantime, we can check the file changed. Yeah, it's a lot of file changes. We basically removed a lot of stuff, but this particular file, I don't think that we need it. Let's copy and add it to our to-do. We probably can get rid of and dot example since we have a script for that. Let's check. And of course it failed. Let's copy the error and then take a look. So the agent can think on its own, and we can check as well. Import error while importing test module. Make sure your test module packages have valid Python names. No module name psutil. Yeah, so that's because probably it was installed manually and not put inside the requirements txt. Let's see if it can do it, but we can also in the meantime do pip freeze. Test. Yeah, and see what we have here. 157 dependencies. And here 30. Yeah, so definitely something was missing. Okay. And now process object has no attribute net connections. Probably a different version. Different versions of psutil have different method names. Let me fix it by updating the code for the newer psutil version. Okay. Let it do it its own way. And now let's check if it's fixed. Let's run all the tests. And now let's search the current Python environment and try reinstalling from scratch. using scripts install dependencies. That's what we want to check if everything works correctly. That's one of the issues is that it doesn't think about preserving the state. So I try to keep everything written, so we can reproduce it later, but it tries again and again to install stuff on its own, and sometimes I'm missing it, and then, of course, it doesn't work when you try to do it on your own or when GitHub workflow works, since it's not, it doesn't have the same state of the environment. I will help you purge. Okay. Let me check. Okay, it will uninstall everything. So pip freeze will list everything that is installed. Grep will just take the part that is interesting for us, and cut will also simplify it. So we just have the library name, and then using xargs, we will do pip uninstall -y. So -y to skip the confirmation, and xargs, I'm not sure if we need it since we are using a single core either way. Like xargs can be useful to run some commands in parallel, to speed up stuff, but here we either way use a single core. Okay, it's uninstalling everything. It takes some time. And now let's try to reinstall again and see if everything will still work. Okay, it's installing everything, and let's wait. Okay, now we can check if the tests work correctly. Let me just cancel and run the tests. And of course not. Missing packages. Let's fix. We can copy that. And now we'll try to go back and forth until we have all the necessary packages in requirements.txt. Let me check. I think. Install it separately. But probably it's not in requirements.txt. Let me check. No, it's not there. Let's first update txt. Let's update the requirements.txt so we have the missing package here. Okay. And then we can rerun the tests. Okay. Looks good. I noticed there are dependency warnings about using connections instead of net connections. It seems that PSUtil API has changed again, and we need to use the opposite method. That's probably it. I think it's not a PSUtil problem, but in the agent has used different versions and different points. That's why we got confused, but okay. Now it looks, at least it's working. Yeah, so probably those are not the latest versions. We'll have to update them later, but let's first get a running and working version. Let's push and see if everything is okay. Let me check the changes. Perfect, I can see the changes. Well, great. So let's add them, then commit, then push. And then we can rerun the workflow and see if it works right now. Okay, we have found one security vulnerability. We will check it later. But now let's see if everything works. But what is this vulnerability? Ah, okay, the block. But I think that it's no longer listed on the requirements, at least not in the new branch. Let me check the action. I think it takes around 40 seconds to 1 minute to initialize the containers. And that's like the longest step, and then the next steps are quite fast. So let's see how it goes, and then we can proceed. Okay, one check was already successful, by the way, which is great. This time it takes a really long time to start those containers. 1.5 minutes and it's still not ready, which is not good. Basically, the best workflows are those that run under 1 minute. Maybe we can simplify it later. Maybe if we drop MySQL for some other database. I'm not sure if we could probably live just with SQLite, since we either way will have only a single instance of our service. Then it should be okay. Database block, okay, good. This time it worked. So let's now request review from Copilot and see what it says. And in the meantime, we can ask about this nth example. I think that it's either way. It's either way obsolete at this point. I've noticed. Can you tell me it's obsolete? Either way, get rid of it. We want to have all the secrets generated by script from our scripts directory. And let it figure out what kind of script I'm talking about. There should be something like yes, set and variables. Let me check the existing scripts, and in the meantime we can see if there are any reviews ready. Oh, the Copilot is still checking. It's yellow circle. Let me check set and vars specifically. Is there any code that actually reads from .env file? Okay. Looks like there is some code which reads from there, but mainly the setup script, but we are not using it in either way. Okay, let me remove and clean up the references. Okay. Current user parameter is passed to the template, but the template expects it in a global context. Consider making current user available globally in the Jinja 2 environment, or ensure all templates use current user receive it in their context. Okay, let's commit. Suggestion. The template checks for current user, but the variable may not be available in all template contexts. This could cause template rendering errors. Sure, current user is consistently passed to all templates that include. Okay. Let's use it here. The health check is performed every half a second during startup with 2-second timeout. This could lead to unnecessary delays if health endpoint is slow to respond. Consider reducing the timer to 1 second or increasing sleep interval. Okay, we can change it. We don't care really. And the access token is retrieved from cookies without checking the secure flag or same site attribute. Consider implementing additional cookie security measure to prevent CSRF attacks and ensure tokens are only sent over HTTPS in production. Okay, let's commit. Let's commit this as well. So validation can be rewritten. The database password is passed as command line argument, which could be visible in process lists. Consider using MySQL configuration file or environment variable to avoid exposing the password in command line arguments. Okay. We can create config file for MySQL and dashboard. The JavaScript code tries to get access token from local storage, but FastAPI application uses HTTP-only cookies for authentication. This will result in null variables and authentication failures. Either store the token in local storage during login or use different approach. Okay. Let's get rid of it. Database password is hard-coded in the test command line. While it is test code, it's better to use environment variables consistently to avoid accidental exposure of credentials. I agree. Wanted to do it either way. When authentication fails, the function returns a template response with an error message, but it should return this with an appropriate HTTP status code like 401 or 400 to indicate the authentication failure to clients. That's true. Good status code is always good. And yeah, we have committed a lot of stuff. And here it's still working on updating those setup scripts. Let's check. And in the meantime, we can do pull rebase. We have still some unstaged changes. So first we'll commit whatever it does here. We will wait for it to finish, and then we can commit the changes. Probably all those updates that we did by Copilot will now break our actions, but no, it looks green. That's interesting. So let's wait for it to finish. Okay, all the tests are still running. And now we should be able to commit and then pull to get the changes from the Copilot. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's commit. It already said that it wants to commit. So let's continue. And now, moment of truth, if there will be any conflicts. Let's pull and rebase, but looks like not. So we can just push from our side and wait for the new build. And then we can merge the PR. Which is already way too big, but yeah. Some of the stuff will get rid of it in the next steps. Especially the README, the scripts will have to update as well. This one we don't need. Let's just push to preserve the current state, and then we'll think about how to improve it. Let's see if the workflow is finished. Okay, it has finished, so everything looks good. Did we push really? Check. Yeah, everything up to date. Oh, let's merge. And that would be it for this time. Next time we will try to verify, like in practice, if all of this really exists. And of course, add the authentications and roles. There is already some skeleton, as I have seen in what the AI agent has done, but for sure it doesn't work perfectly. So we will have to first verify what's done and then try to correct it.